How does it end? I mean, you're a historian. You have covered many conflicts and wars. I just worry about whether Israel has an end game here that doesn't just involve, in many of their eyes, in the leadership, just taking over Gaza, for example, occupying it completely going forward. Do you see anything other than that happening?
Well, there's no great appetite within the Israeli military for an occupation of Gaza because they have bitter memories of what that was like before, and indeed what other occupations that the Israeli army, the Israeli Defense Forces have carried out in the past. But who has a better idea at this point? It's a little difficult to imagine the dust settling and a new force emerging to take the place of Hamas that isn't just as bad. It's not like the Palestinian Authority is about to be put back in charge of Gaza. Everybody knows that Palestinian Authority is an oxymoron. Those two words no longer meaningfully belong together. There are some other options which I think need to be considered. After all, what's the United Nations for if it's not to send blue helmets into dangerous territories where the alternative is ongoing conflict? And that seems to me to be the kind of thing that should be under much more serious discussion at the moment, internationalizing Gaza. That seems the kind of end game that would make much more sense to me than an Israeli occupation that would almost certainly just become a succession of terrorist attacks and countermeasures.
Yeah, I agree. Just want to turn briefly to Ukraine, because obviously Ukraine has almost been forgotten at the moment, at a very worrying time if you're President Zelensky, with American financial support for their military endeavors looking like it's pretty perilous in terms of future financial input. Where are we with this Ukraine war? Is it, as some people fear now, inevitable that there will have to be some kind of deal that involves Putin swallowing up some, if not all, of the land that he has barbarically stolen?
Well, Piers, 20 years ago, I wrote a book called American Colossus, and I argued there that one of the problems of American power is the attention deficit disorder that kicks in, usually after a couple of years of any engagement. And even when the engagement isn't one that involves American troops in the front line. And sure enough, American interest has been on the wane in the course of the last several months, to the point that there are real question marks over the continuation of American aid. And American aid is pretty crucial, both militarily and financially. In the European Union too, as well as in the UK, one has the sense, and a Ukrainian friend said this to me yesterday, that people's interest has just wandered. My friend was saying that the CNN operation in Kyiv has been relocated to the Middle East as a kind of symbol that a new story is in town and the old story is no longer really getting the ratings. This is very concerning for any friend of Ukraine, and I consider myself a staunch friend of Ukraine. I've been to that country almost every year for the past decade, because the scenario isn't inconceivable that they could lose this war. The Russians are amassing firepower. They have greater raw resources. They have the capacity to launch an air war against Ukraine in the coming weeks that could paralyze Ukraine's electricity system if it's successful. And so it's not so much that there's going to be some nasty compromise deal. I don't think President Putin's interested in negotiation. He's playing for higher stakes because he senses that the politics in the West is going his way, and he has a shot at victory if he's patient. And that's the thing that really concerns me. We sort of lost interest. We're focused on the next war, the next shiny, bright object. And while we're not paying attention, we could see Ukraine defeated. And Piers, mark my words, if Ukraine is defeated, that will send a signal not only to Putin, it'll send a signal to Xi Jinping in China, it'll send a signal to the Ayatollahs in Iran, it'll send a signal to Pyongyang, to North Korea. And the signal will be the West is weak, it cannot sustain its commitments, it can't even hold Ukraine up in the face of a Russian attack. And that will spell the beginning of a very dark age in which the 2020s will start to feel an awful lot like the 1930s. So the stakes are extremely high, and I urge people, do not lose interest in Ukraine. It is vitally important that Russia not win this war.